Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jonas Ruda, and I'd like to welcome you all here for Victoria Navin's photography exhibit. And she is going to talk to you about her work. And the show is up until the end of this month. And everything is, all pieces are available for sale at a very reasonable price. So please look around with the price list and the flyer that we prepared. And I'd like to introduce Victoria Navin, who many of you know, but some of you don't know. So tell us about your work, Victoria.
Thank you, Jonas.
For coming. Thank you for...
Okay, I'd like to thank all of you for coming out today to see my work, first of all. And I'd like to thank Jonas for hanging it. So if you want to give him a round of applause.
Thank you, everybody.
You can see he did a great job of hanging it. So the photographs that you see, the 17, are part of approximately 1,500 that I shot last August when I took a tour with a company called Nordic Visitor. So I went for 5 or 6 days, but I flew in early and stayed an extra day on the end. So I ended up spending about a week there altogether. And I really didn't know what to expect, except that the landscape is supposed to be very, very alien to our eyes because it's very rocky. It's mostly lava rocks, basically, covered by moss, and has very unusual geographic features. Glaciers, the icebergs, the waterfalls. I mean, they're totally unlike anything that we are used to seeing. So I was very eager to see them and to be able to photograph them. So I took this tour with Nordic Visitor, and they took us out on a van every day. There were about a dozen of us, and we typically have to walk about 45 minutes from where the van parked to actually see the glaciers or the icebergs. So we were really seeing the genuine article, if you will. We started out in Reykjavik, and then we traveled along the rim of South Iceland. And I guess I should mention, I went in August, which is their summer. And what that means is it's sunny sometimes, 50, 55 degrees and windy. And that's the summer, ladies and gentlemen. So fortunately, I'm very comfortable in that sort of weather. Many days, there was a nice gray complex sky involved as well. And I love gray light. I love to shoot in gray light. So I was very grateful for that. So when I was told about the tour, they said, well, we'll be staying in chain hotels along the way. So I feared the worst, quite frankly, and I expected fried food and mediocre food. Well, a chain hotel in Iceland means something very different than what we are familiar with. The food was absolutely out of this world. There was nothing bland or fried or, I mean, it was just excellent. Now the food is, the vegetables and fruits are imported. They only, I think they only have about 2% of their land devoted to agriculture, and a lot of that is hydroponic. So they import fruits and vegetables, and of course eat fish that their fishing industry catches. So I found the food to be very delicious and unique. And the actual hotels themselves were very interesting. I stayed in a hotel in Reykjavik that overlooked the old harbor. And it was a paint factory originally, which was thoroughly refurbished. And I literally had a view to the harbor from my window. So the photo of that ship that you see over there on the wall was what I saw from my hotel room. And then we embarked on a tour of South Iceland, and I went to multiple glaciers and I was very interested in the vastness and the alien quality of these landscapes. So I have 4 or 5 of them at the beginning of the show. And another thing that we did was take a boat trip along South Iceland, and we traveled in the glacial lake itself for about an hour and a half. I would say there were maybe 20 people in the boat, and we were able to take shots of individual icebergs like I was able to do. Several people have asked me why the icebergs have black patterning in them, and the reason is it comes from volcanic rock, ultimately. And we also visited a famous beach, which was in Vik, Iceland, V-I-K, and the photo in that corner shows the rocks on top of the black sand beach. So all of those beaches ultimately derive from volcanic rock. So that's what you're looking at. And I also enjoyed seeing the basalt towers that are at that same beach. We happened to be there late in the morning, so there were some nice shadows on them, but I was sorry to see tourists climbing on top of them because they are a natural wonder, and you just don't like to see people climbing on top of them because I'm sure that's going to degrade them. So we did spend quite a bit of time in the van. I also saw a barn and a small area that was cultivated. You can see the side of the barn, which I liked myself because I'm very interested in texture. So, yes, that's it. I saw some farm animals, some cows, but it's not a typical landscape for Iceland. What is typical is vast lava fields of rock that are covered with moss. And they're supposed to be very sharp. And there are pathways between them where you can walk, but you're not supposed to touch them or anything. They're supposed to be very sharp and abrasive. As I say, I found the gray light very, very interesting to work with. And they're not necessarily in the show, but I did take a lot of shots of what I consider to be very complex skies.
Wait for the noise.
Oh, sorry. Just feel free to jump in with questions anytime.
Tell us about the food a little bit. That is unique to Iceland.
Did you say the fuel?
The food that you had in the hotel.
Well, I do think it was fairly unique because they use very fresh ingredients. As you would imagine, a lot of fish from their own native fishing industry. They import the fruits and vegetables. Of course, there's some hydroponic agriculture, and we even visited a tomato factory.
Did you have the soup there?
I did not.
It was exceptional.
The best tomato soup ever.
That's great. That's
What
wonderful.
type was it?
It was tomato soup.
Well, they grew the tomatoes hydroponically, so they were up on vines, but there were pails of water and growth nutrients in the pails. And it was just like a factory. It was huge. And they sold tomato soup, they sold marinara sauce.
Okay.
So if you were fond of tomato-based products, it was definitely, yes.
What kind?
So, what were the people like, and what did it seem, how did it seem like it would be to live there? What was the society?
Well, I would say most of the people, I would say all of the people in the hospitality industry spoke English, because people in Iceland realize that they are isolated. It's an island near the Arctic Circle. It's not near other countries. They know that they're isolated, so they learn English
And Danish.
in school, and Danish too. Denmark occupied Iceland during World War II, so they considered themselves independent much earlier. They had a very early democracy in Iceland, but they were occupied during World War II.
So if you went and, sort of wandering Reykjavik, would it be a little hard to find people that spoke English? Or you could...
It would not be hard at all. People learn English at school. The only people that I ran into that did not speak English were the cleaning ladies in the hotel.
And so, again, did you get a sense of what the society's like and how it is to live there? Or not really?
Being there a week, I would say not, but our guide was from Holland, and she actually learned Icelandic, which is no mean feat. I learned one word, tak, which is thank you. But this lady, Simone, was a photographer, and she was also a tour guide, and she had lived in Iceland for 10 years, and she enjoyed herself. She found that it was relatively easy to meet people. One thing the Icelanders are crazy about is swimming. So they have public swimming pools all over the place. And they don't use chlorine or anything like we do. So they have very explicit drawings showing you where to wash before you get into the pool. They'll paint those. They show you a body. They show, the armpits and, what you would expect in shocking pink. And they say those are the parts that you must wash, and this is what allows us to forego the chemicals that we are familiar with here.
And everybody does it. Everybody showers down and scrubs down completely. Those pools are amazing. They're geothermally heated. They don't expend any energy to heat them. They're hot because that's what comes out of the ground. So you go to one of these hot pools, and there are hot pools like this, and there are hot pools 5 times the size of this room. You take your pick. But the thing is that you walk to the pool and you're looking at, there might be a geyser outside the pool. There are icicles hanging from the railings. You order your prosecco when you walk out, when you go to change your clothes, and then when you've changed into your bathing suit, you pick up your wine on the way to the pool. It is just, and people go to the hot pools after work. They don't go to the tavern. They don't go to the bar. They meet at the hot pool, and some people just do it every day. It's where you go after work.
Honestly.
I would love to live there.
I mean, it's a delightful feature of Icelandic life, and the energy is actually geothermal. It comes, as Andy said, from under the ground, and one of the other places that we visited was a geothermal geyser area where we literally saw the hot steam coming from the earth.
So is that what they use primarily for their energy?
They
Yes.
do, so it's clean
80%.
energy.
Yeah.
And
How
when you
much?
walk
80%.
around,
80%.
there's no pollution that you detect in the air. The air smells clean, ladies and gentlemen.
What did they do for different options for different professions or
Well, tourism is very big in Reykjavik, at least. And I'm sure you have professions just like you do here. You have an educational establishment. But I'm not aware of any industry in our sense of the word outside of the fishing industry and a few hydroponic businesses.
Other than tomatoes, what
Well-
other vegetables do they grow hydroponic?
Well, they have to, everything else is imported.
So So just tomatoes are grown hydroponically?
That's what we saw.
Okay, so nothing else is.
They do raise sheep. There's lots of land in Iceland, and you see sheep everywhere. You see more horses, but you see lots of sheep. So,
Oh, that's right, we visited a horse farm
Yes.
too, of miniature horses, and they don't allow gambling, so it's strictly, to watch the horses race. And as a matter of fact, we saw a horse that won some races. So the owner told us that they bought her a tiara after she, and they put the tiara on her head, and I took some photos of it. And the young woman took us around a circle. I think there's a special name for it, but she showed us the different steps that the horse was capable of. But it shows you another part of Icelandic life. I mean, they just didn't want to get into gambling.
Are they mostly homogeneous, or do young people, a lot of them leave Iceland, or are they homogeneous? Are they sort of unto
I
themselves?
think
or-
for the most part, one of the cab drivers that I talked to said that they had some Syrian immigrants who had come into the country. And I asked him how they did, and he said they do very well. You know, he said they're very hardworking, and they tend to do very well in Iceland.
What kind of vegetation is there? What kind of trees? Evergreens or?
There aren't a lot of trees. Trees are more of a novelty. And in fact, the city of Reykjavik is quite modern. It's only been around for about 200 years. So the buildings that you see are quite modern in construction. The churches that you see are very modern. You know, it wasn't settled in the Middle Ages.
What's the main religion there? Is it just Christianity or
It's mainly Protestant.
Protestant?
I don't know what the degree of observance is.
A lot of glass and metal,
Sorry?
a lot of glass and metal buildings.
Yes.
but there are old buildings in Reykjavik. I mean, 18th century buildings.
No, that to
Not
me is.
14th century buildings.
Precisely, that's the point I'm trying to make. Many European cities were around in the Middle Ages because the Romans settled so many parts of Europe. You even have Roman ruins in many places of Europe, but not in Iceland. In Britain, there were Roman settlements, in Scotland, but you don't have that in Iceland. So it gives an appearance of a very modern city. Yes.
Can you say something quickly about the technical and what camera you use and anything in particular you do with printing or have your prints done somewhere?
I use a Samsung 1100F digital camera, which has a point and shoot feature, but I can't use that part of it. I have to control for the light, I have to crop, I have to do things like that.
Any lenses, different lenses, or?
I don't, no, I don't use special lenses or anything like that. The one thing I do is crop. I crop a lot. I don't tend to change the light because the light is usually what is unique. And I'll crop to make a composition stronger.
You just use like Photoshop or some other?
No, I don't use Photoshop.
You-
I don't
you do
use
it in camera?
filters. Sorry?
You do your cropping in camera?
No, I put the memory card onto my laptop and I'll crop the image there. My camera has the ability to do it, but I just prefer to do it on a different scale. I don't use filters or anything like that. I don't like them because I think besides the composition and the moment, what is unique is the light as well. So I don't tend to change that. I don't see the point.
What
So
do you use to crop it? What program do you use to crop your photos?
It's the thing that's in my new laptop. Not sure it has a name,
Okay.
but it
so-
crops.
So
And
one
that's
of the
what I
default
need.
ones, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's like a Windows photo, it's engineered, sometimes or something like the different ones that come.
Yeah, it's some kind of basic thing that came with the laptop, and it's sufficient for what I do. So, I also have a couple of streetscapes that came from Reykjavik in the corner. One thing that I was crazy about was a shipyard that I saw, and that is in the corner as well. And I was intrigued by that because I was able to see this from my hotel room. So I took a little walk and I saw this wonderful thing, all of that equipment used for the shipbuilding, and the buildings in the background looked like they had images from the cinema. And they reminded me of Ingrid Bergman films from World War II. So I just thought it was delightful to see an image like that as the background of a shipyard. Anyway, Jonas doesn't agree with me on that.
What?
I was crazy about it.
Did you get into the
No, I like
art,
that, it just,
art center? The Harper
I-
in Reykjavik?
No, I didn't go to the concert. I did take some shots of the facade,
The
which I
inside
thought
is
was,
spectacular
is
for
that right?
photography.
I did take some photos of the outside facade, but I did not go inside. I also walked around the area of the old harbor, and I found an Aurora museum which had representations of the northern lights. And since I was there in the summer, it was basically bright most of the night. So I didn't get to see them, and I was very happy to see this museum, which described the physics of the northern lights and showed you representations from different countries, besides Iceland, Russia, Norway, Finland, a lot of other countries that are close to the Arctic Circle and have them. So Andy and his wife were telling me they were there in November and had a very interesting experience with the Northern Lights as well.
Yeah, it is spectacular to see. But we want to go back in the summer now to see the rest of, because it's so near the Arctic Circle, they close the roads. You can't get to the northern part of Iceland in December. It's white out. You can't. So if you want to see the northern lights, you have to go in the winter. But if you want to see the northern part of the island, you have to go in the summer. We're happy to go back.
Well, it's a country that's well worth a journey. And I found it very visually stimulating. I love the nice complex gray skies that I found. And I would certainly recommend it.
What's the population?
350,000.
Really?
So if the skies are gray in August, what are they for the rest of the year?
Now, when I say complex gray, I don't mean that they're a flat, unremitting gray. There was plenty of sunlight as well, but it was changing as the day went on.
What are the temps in the winter? If they're 50 in the summer, what are they in the
Well, you're near the Arctic Circle, so they're cold.
winter?
Now, when we were there, it was actually warmer there than it was in Guilford. Those 2 weeks. It was in the 30s in Guilford, and it was in the 40s in Iceland. But that's during the day.
Yeah.
And what Victoria said about the wind,
Oh, it's very windy. Oh, yeah.
we had to change a tire on a big SUV in 60 mile per hour plus winds. It was a terrifying experience.
So what does the wind chill temperature become?
Well, who knows? I mean, minus something, but the winds can be, it's not unusual for the winds to be 50, 60 miles an hour and above. It's not always like that.
But
Some
it
days
would-
there's no wind, but it can be very windy.
The wind chill really only bothers you when it gets cold, really cold. If the temperature's in the 40s and 50s, not going to make
Oh, yeah,
that much
yeah.
difference.
Yeah, the end of November was not deep winter there. I think in end of January, February, it's a very different story. We kind of got lucky with the weather. But still, when that wind kicks, even if it's, 40 degrees and the wind's 60 miles per hour, it's cold.
You know it.
Well, another thing that came up when we were touring in August was floods. So we had to change our itinerary and go to other locations because the roads were blocked on the path that we originally planned to follow. So it's something to consider.
Hey, apparently you can't win it on ice. Either the roads are blocked by ice or they're blocked by moving water.
Well, the whole landscape is fragile. I remember seeing a news story about a week ago about part of a glacier collapsing
Oh, yeah.
in Iceland. Now, I saw it on video and I saw the people running away, literally, because it was creating a tsunami. It makes you realize how fragile the environment really is.
Victoria, how concerned are the inhabitants about global warming and if they're concerned with
I really couldn't say, Sherry. I don't have enough information to.
Did you hear any conversation about global warming?
I did not.
We heard some conversation about it from our guide when we visited the ice caves under the Vatnajökull glacier. They are concerned about it. But remember that they get 80% of their energy from geothermal energy. Sources, yes. Couldn't find that word. So 80% of it. So they're not spewing coal fumes into the air. They're not fooling around with radioactive elements and nuclear reactors. They're just using what comes from the earth.
But global warming is affecting the glaciers,
Yeah.
seriously affecting the glaciers.
Yeah, some ice caves that used to be open to visitors collapsed. And that was not the only one. It's been going on for years now. So the big cathedral type ice caves are harder and harder to find. We visited small ice caves where it's small passages and corridors. It's nothing that opens up big because our guide told us they're a little afraid to go in there because you never know when something's going to collapse. So they are concerned, and it is an issue.
What kind of wildlife is there?
Wildlife?
Yeah. I assume like polar bears are there? No polar bears.
They can survive.
Well,
I couldn't.
indigenous to some,
The
fox.
The fox is the biggest carnivore
Okay.
on the island.
I'm really not a bird lover, Satinder, so it really never occurred to me. I'm sorry. It's not. I'm more of a visual person, and I've traveled with people who are nuts about birds, for example, but it's just not something I'm focused on.
Well, I can tell you a little. There are
Please.
lots and lots of puffins.
Okay.
Lots of variety of seagulls, skuas, terns, the type of birds you'd expect to see on an Arctic ocean.
Okay.
But puffins, if you've not seen puffins,
They're cute.
they're adorable.
There's about a dozen varieties, probably maybe a few more,
Of puffins?
of birds.
Of birds, okay.
We were at a place and they had a chart on the wall that showed the various types of birds that you would possibly see.
And land animals mostly is horses. You see horses everywhere. You went to a farm, which we didn't do, but they're on the side of the road. There were no feral horses in Iceland. They're all owned. And
Okay.
a lot of people own horses, and a lot of people ride. So you drive down the road, and they just come up to the fence at the side of the road. They're very friendly. They love the attention, and they look like Mongolian ponies. They're small, gorgeous, beautiful manes and beautiful colors, and they have wonderful dispositions. All the ones that we saw quite a few, and sheep, lots of sheep. I did see one mouse, so I know that there were mice, because I guess the foxes have to eat something. I suppose there were raptors, but I don't know. I don't know. But there's not a lot of wildlife, just like there are not a lot of trees. It's a pretty unforgiving climate.
Do people have any like pets like dogs and cats there?